Z-patriot Igor Strelkov Girkin has made another loud prediction. He is sure that Russia will face a chain of catastrophes in the coming years, which will add up to one perfect storm. The corresponding letter from Strelkov was published on April the 11th by his close associate, Z-propagandist Mikhail Polynkov. Strelkov, who is currently serving a sentence in a Russian prison for criticizing Putin's regime, warns that a perfect storm is approaching Russia. I consider all opportunities to reserve the catastrophic developments in the country in the next 1 to 3 years to be missed, wrote the Russian Z-patriot. He claims that the catastrophe is already on the threshold and the Russian Federation will face a chain of successive collapses. In this case, the Russian Federation risks losing its statehood. He considers such a development inevitable. Empires, no matter how majestic, collapse. Strelkov stated, "The West can crush Russia's war machine and force Putin to the negotiating table with a Cold War-style strategy," a former NATO advisor has warned recently. Ian Brzezinski, a former Deputy Assistant U.S. Secretary of Defense for Europe and NATO policy, believes Moscow is defeatable in Ukraine, but only if the West fully leverages its economic and military dominance. Instead of seeking a negotiated settlement, he says the focus should be on overwhelming Russia's capacity to continue the war. Brzezinski told The Sun, "I feel the Russians will continue the war and have the capacity to drive forward for quite a long time. I do think that Russia is defeatable in this war, and to do that doesn't mean that one should run to Russia asking for a deal to end the war. One has to get into the Soviet mindset." Putin, he explains, still views the world through a Cold War lens, and the key to forcing him to the table is shifting the correlation of forces so drastically that he has no choice but to seek peace. This strategy echoes the high-stakes power plays of the 20th century, where military posturing and economic pressure dictated geopolitical outcomes. To accelerate that breaking point, Brzezinski argues the West must apply the same tactics that helped undermine the Soviet Union. That includes ramping up military support for Ukraine, tightening the economic stronghold on Russia, and launching an aggressive information campaign targeting Moscow's political elite. The goal is to force Putin to focus inward, worrying more about his own survival than his expansionist ambitions.
Russia and Ukraine have traded accusations of violating a ceasefire on strikes on energy infrastructure. According to Associated Press, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Ukrainian counterpart Andriy Sybiha accused each other of attacking energy sites, speaking at different panels at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum in Turkey on Friday. Lavrov said that Russia hasn't attacked any Ukrainian energy facilities since March 18, when Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to halt the attacks for 30 days in a phone call with President Donald Trump. Lavrov accused Ukraine of breaking the terms of the U.S. brokered deal and said he provided the list of energy sites targeted by Ukraine to Turkey's foreign minister, the U.S., and the UN. Sybiha contested Lavrov's claims, saying that Russia has launched more than 70 missiles, 2,000 drones, and 6,000 guided bombs on Ukraine. Lavrov also warned that a potential Black Sea deal could only be implemented after issues with insurance, trade, and access to ports for Russian organizations are resolved. Details of the prospective deal were not released, but it appeared to mark another attempt to ensure safe Black Sea shipping after a 2022 agreement that was brokered by the UN and Turkey but halted by Russia the next year. Lavrov said Washington has been considering Russia's demands but hasn't replied to them yet. The White House said in March that the U.S. will help restore Russia's access to the world market for agricultural and fertilizer exports, lower maritime insurance costs, and enhance access to ports and payment systems for such transactions. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that, "We're going to evaluate the Russian conditions," noting that some of them include sanctions that are not ours, they belong to the European Union.
This time, when President Trump suggested another Black Sea deal, Putin said, yeah, we are ready, but we need to draw lessons from the past. And let's make sure before we launch it, let's resolve the things on freight, insurance, calling on the ports. The Americans took this and they are considering. They didn't come back to us after this. We have been keeping the word, and Ukrainians have been attacking us from the very beginning, every passing day, maybe with 2 or 3 exceptions. And I gave to our colleagues from Turkey, to Minister Fidan, what we give to Americans, to UN, to OSCE, the list of facts, listing the attacks by Ukraine during the last 3 weeks against Russian energy infrastructure.
Russia escalated terror and fighted, I have statistics with me, and fighted almost 70 missiles, over 2,200 Shahid drones, and over 6,000 guided aerial bombs and Ukraine, mostly at civilians. This clearly shows to the world who wants peace and who wants war.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday addressed members of the Ramstein meeting in Brussels via video link, urging for them to strengthen air defense for Ukraine. 10 Patriot systems, the free world has them. What is needed now are political decisions to make them work for peace. We need that result, Zelensky said. According to Associated Press, during his speech, the Ukrainian leader said that last week Ukrainian soldiers captured the first Chinese citizens fighting on the front. As of now, we have information that at least several hundred Chinese nationals are fighting as part of Russia's occupation forces. This means Russia is clearly trying to prolong the war, even by using Chinese lives, Zelensky added. Meanwhile, European countries vowed to send billions of dollars in further funding to help Ukraine keep fighting in the conflict with Russia, as a U.S. envoy pursued peace efforts in a trip to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin amid growing questions about the Kremlin's willingness to stop the more than 3-year conflict.
You know that Ukraine has a shortage of air defense systems. You know that Patriot systems can effectively protect against ballistic threats. You also know that we are forced to move the systems we have around the country to give at least temporary protection to different cities. And you know what happens when even one system goes out of service. It means lost lives. In Russia, they see this as their advantage, their ability to be a terrorist state. And we must take away that ability, their belief that killing can be treated lightly. I ask you to focus first of all on air defense for Ukraine. 10 Patriot systems, the free world has them. What is needed now are political decisions to make them work for peace. We need that result. Next, right now, Ukraine's defense minister is in Brussels, and he will present the most urgent needs for supplies to the front lines. But I ask you not to focus only on current or short-term needs. We need a clear long-term security strategy. Last week, our soldiers captured the first Chinese citizens fighting on the front, fighting for Russia. As of now, we have information that at least several hundred Chinese nationals are fighting as part of Russia's occupation forces. This means Russia is clearly trying to prolong the war, even by using Chinese lives. Putin was not satisfied with soldiers from North Korea. Now he is trying to cover his shortages by pulling in yet another nation, the Chinese. How long can he keep doing this? We must work together to make such questions not about Moscow's choices, but about our joint pressure on Moscow, because that's the only way it will work. And along with supporting our forces and maintaining sanctions against Russia now, we must also think about the future. What will force Russia to choose diplomacy and peace tomorrow? This is our common fate. Europe, the United States, NATO. I thank every leader, every country, everyone present here who's working with us on a new format, a format for a guarantee force.